As Lizzie said, my friend and colleague, we are here today to have a very good webinar, and it is focused on what I want in my life, and it is for self-advocates, presented by self-advocates, and we also hope that family members, other professionals in the field benefit from it greatly. We've gotten very good feedback. And in this particular one, we're really talking about being part of boards, commissions, advisory committees, what they are, why you'd want to be involved, and the different things that make you feel a part of one. And both from the process side, and then what it's like to be on one, what works, what doesn't. And there are three speakers very close to my heart that will be with us today. And I'm going to start by introducing Gabe Martinez. He is a friend, a colleague here at the Sonoran Center, and he also is a board member on the President's Committee on People with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities under the Biden administrations. So Gabe, I'll send it over to you.
Thank you, Barb. I'm Gabe Martinez. I'm a project aide and peer navigator for the Sonoran News Ed. And I want to do George Garcia. George Garcia is a executive director for Southwest Institute for Families and Children, known as SWI, and SWI mission is to support people with disability through empowerment and application and the knowledge. And please welcome George on this call with us, and I'll hand it to George.
Thank you, Gabe. Good afternoon, everybody. So as Barbara mentioned and Gabe has introduced me, we are going to be talking about advisory boards or joining boards, advisory committees, commissions, all those different things. We're going to be talking about what they are, how they work, and then why it's important to join one. I'm going to be doing a PowerPoint presentation, but please feel free if you have any questions, just go ahead and feel free to speak up or put it in the chat. Probably won't be able to see it, so Barb, if you see anything come up in the chat, just please let me know. But without further ado, let's get started. See if I can share my screen here. Okay. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right, awesome. So let's talk about self-advocates on boards. First of all, what is a board? Well, a board is often used by nonprofit organizations and even some businesses. The board oversees the nonprofit organization or the business, and they're legally responsible for some of its actions. So boards will see things like, for instance, what is that organization doing, how they're spending their money. They might look at budgets, things like that. They're just making sure that the organization is doing what they're supposed to be doing. So who belongs to these boards? Or what's the membership like? Well, boards are made up of people from the public, people like you and me. As long as those members are interested in making sure that that organization is successful. Now, sometimes certain organizations may have certain requirements for their board. So for instance, have you ever heard of Centers for Independent Living? In Arizona, we have what, 5 centers for independent living, like Ability 360 and Direct Independence. We have different centers for independent living. Well, under their board requirements, their board is required to have 51% of their board members to be people with disabilities. Sometimes boards may also have other requirements. They may be looking for certain types of people to join that have certain strengths. So they might be looking for strong self-advocates, or they might be looking for representation from certain people in their community. Maybe they need more Hispanic, or maybe they may be looking for more African American representation, or more people with disabilities. The one thing that boards cannot have is that they cannot have an employee that works for that organization to be in that to be on that board, because that creates what's called a conflict of interest. So what do boards do? I kind of mentioned this earlier, but the board helps guide the organization in doing its work. For instance, a board might meet with the organization, or the board might meet to decide what are the goals for that organization. Sometimes you'll see organizations have meetings with their board, and they'll decide long-term goals. What is the goal of the organization? What do they want to accomplish in the next year, or maybe even 5 years from now? So they help guide the organization in doing their work. The board also oversees the work being done by the organization to make sure that they are on track to meet their goals. Organizations might meet with their board, quarterly or monthly, and give updates on what they're doing. And if the board doesn't like what's going on, the board might have questions or have suggestions on how that organization can better do its work. The board also reviews and approves how the organization uses their money. You want to make sure that they're doing everything correctly, that the money is not being abused or stolen. So the board always has an interest in making sure that money is being spent correctly. So how often do boards meet? Well, boards usually have a regularly scheduled meeting. For instance, they might meet once a month or once a quarter. That means every 3 months. Larger organizations may need to meet with their board once a month because they're so big and they have so much things going on. They constantly need to be meeting with their board to make sure that they're making the right decisions, or keeping everybody aware of what's going on. Smaller organizations may only meet once a quarter or every 3 months. Sometimes boards do have to meet in times when they're not scheduled for meetings. There might be an emergency meeting that the board needs to have to make some decisions. How they schedule those meetings is written in their bylaws, and you can check the bylaws of an organization to decide, so that you can make sure to know how it works for them to schedule their usual meetings and then any emergency meetings that they may have. So why join a board? Why is it important to join boards? Well, joining a board is a great way to get involved. Maybe you want to get involved in the field in which the organization works. You know, it's a great way to get involved in doing the work that maybe you want to do in the future. You know, maybe you're interested in working with disability, people with disabilities. So you join the board of an organization that works with people with disabilities, and that's a great way of starting your career in that field. Or maybe you just want to learn more about what is it that an organization does, right? So maybe you're interested in working with animals. You join the board of an organization that works with animals, and you get to learn more about, you know, what's it like to work in that field. It's a great way of getting involved. Joining boards is a great place to learn leadership skills. You know, by joining a board, you gain leadership skills. You know, you start to be the decision maker in some of these organizations. You get to learn what a president does or how an organization is run. You also may be part of committees that really gets you to be some of the deciders in these organizations. And by learning these leadership skills, you also get to bring your skills that you've learned to other organizations, maybe to your job, or maybe you belong to a self-advocacy group. You know, if you're a part of a self-advocacy group, you may also know that some self-advocacy groups have similar structures like organizations with their presidents and vice presidents and committees. So you can bring your leadership skills that you learn working in these boards to other organizations like your self-advocacy groups. Joining a board is also a great way to make connections. You know, you get to make friendships. Some of my best friends that I have is I managed to get them by joining organizations, working with advisory committees, or working with on boards. So you get to make friendships with people in the community. You also get name recognition out there. You get your name recognition within the organization. All of a sudden, people know who you are. And by people knowing who you are, they might start thinking and considering you when some opportunities come up. You also get to make connections with people from other organizations. Like I said, boards are made up of people from the community, and they come from different backgrounds. They come from different work or different organizations. So you get to make those connections, and you get to learn not only about what's going on in the organization which you're volunteering or in which you're a board member of, but you also get to make connections with people from other organizations. And you get to learn about what's going on in their organization and maybe even get involved with what they're doing.
George,
Yes.
John, with to what you're saying,
Go ahead.
John, no, translate if you like. Go ahead. He can hear you. They can hear you.
Hey, John, how are you? Teresa, can you help me out here? Mm.
Yes. Oh, hi.
Would you like me to talk about that for a second? John works at Target, and he also knows that a couple of times a year they give out grants to schools. And so when he is at different meetings and talking to groups, and at group meetings, he will announce when the grants are out, and he can tell them that it's time for their schools to apply for the grants. And it'll help the local school to get money for some different projects that they want to do, like mentoring projects and things like that, which is a great way to introduce people with disabilities and mentoring projects to the local school district.
I'm
That's such
going
a
to
great-
interject just for a moment, and because these are the other esteemed speakers that you'll hear more today, but John and Teresa work as strong self-advocacy leaders, and George as well. And we're going to make it interactive. So as John speaks, you'll hear questions and thoughts and observations from John Britton and Teresa Moore. And then John and Teresa will also be having some reflections in their portion after George really lays this important groundwork about boards and commissions to set the stage. So I didn't think you would, I thought you maybe wanted a little bit of an introduction, John and Teresa. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think what John and Teresa say is really important here, because once you join boards and you make those connections, not just within maybe one organization, but several organizations, it's a great way of sharing information. Maybe the organization that you belong to has a grant available or a program available that's really, really good for self-advocates. Well, by learning that information in that board meeting, or maybe at your employer, you're able to share that information with all the connections that you, and have people, be able to take advantage of those opportunities, like maybe applying for a grant or joining a program that's available. So that's where the connections really come into play. You're able to share information and make sure that people with disabilities are able to really, use those programs and grant opportunities as they come available. Joining a board is also a great way to build up your resume. When you join a board, it's great. It's a good idea. It's great. It's a great idea to put that information on your resume, especially if you lack work experience. Maybe you haven't been able to get a job yet, but if you're able to put in there that you belong to a board, future employers might look at that and say, this shows leadership skills. This shows that you have work experience, attending meetings and committees, showing what you've been able to do on that board. Maybe you work with the organization to put on together a conference or some sort of program that organization offers. And it's a good way to put that, to build up your resume. It shows that you have responsibility, especially if you are you take an officer role within that organization or within that board. You know, if you're a secretary or a president or even a head of committee, it shows leadership skills. All of that looks really good on your resume. So that's why it's important to join boards or advisory committees or commissions. And I think we kind of talked about this already, but opportunities. Joining a board is a great way to find opportunities that you can use in your life. You know, by joining boards or advisory committees, you might learn about work opportunities. You know, as programs open up or organizations have positions that open up, you might be the first to know about it. And you can apply for those work opportunities. So that not only are you then a board member, but then you join an organization, especially if it's an organization that does something that you're really interested in doing, like working with people with disabilities. You might also learn about volunteer opportunities. You can volunteer to put together a conference or give presentations or just join some of the programs that the organization offers. There's also learning opportunities. You get to learn more about what an organization does or what's going on in a specific field. You also learn about opportunities available in other organizations. Yes, you may belong to the board of one organization, but you also learn about what other organizations are doing. You know, if they're opening new programs, can you get involved? Or you can share that information with, you know, self-advocacy groups or people you know, so that maybe not only do you take advantage of those opportunities, but other people also take advantage of. So applying for board membership. All right, applying for a nonprofit organization can be a pretty easy experience. Most applications will ask you for information about you and why you want to join that board. They want to know, for instance, things like, you know, your contact information, your demographic information. That means like, are you male or female or you know, what race you are? These questions are asked because sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, boards may have certain requirements. They also want to know your past experience. You know, what have you done before? You know, they might ask you for your resume because they want to know what kind of self-advocate you are. They also might want to know what skills you bring to the board. For instance, the board may want to bring somebody that's really good at accounting because they need somebody that's going to have that experience of, you know, knowing what the numbers mean, know what finances are, so that the board is able to understand what's going on with the finances of the organization. Or maybe they need somebody that's a really strong self-advocate, a good speaker, someone that's really going to, you know, share what's going on with the organization and really let the community know what's going on with that organization. So They also may want to know why you want to join that board. What's your reason for joining that board? What do you want to get out of it? So that when you do join that board, let's say that you want to get more leadership skills. They might provide you with a mentor, or they might provide you with opportunities to build up your leadership skills. Some nonprofit organizations have membership recruitment committees that can help with the application process. That recruitment committee within the organization knows exactly what that organization is looking for. They may be looking for a mixture of community members with different experiences. They may be looking for community stakeholders, like leaders within that community, so that they're able to work with the leaders in the community. Or they might be looking for diverse representation. Diversity means basically a good mixture of people. They may be looking for people with disabilities to join because they don't have enough people with disabilities. Teresa and John, is your hand up?
John would like to add a little bit to this conversation.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Ah. No. 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 No.
John says, I love to get us out to meet new people.
Ah. Ah. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Some. Yeah. Yeah. But. Yeah. I. Yeah. To. The. Now. To. The. The.
Not to be what? I'm sorry, what was that last word?
The.
A friend? Afraid. Afraid. Okay, so sometimes they start out, they might be afraid, but after a while, they stop being afraid and want to try to be part of the group. So they start out being afraid, but then they want to be part.
Yeah, joining the board can be intimidating sometimes. But that's why the board might want to know what you want to get out of it by joining the board. So that if you do want to gain your leadership skills, they might pair you with somebody that can mentor you to help you, gain your leadership skills. But let's say that you're also someone that's already really outgoing and somebody that really wants to spread the word about what an organization is doing. If you bring that to the table as a board member, they might put you on, like, for instance, the outreach committee or something that works with the public, because then you become that cheerleader per se for that organization. You really want to show that they're doing some great work in the community and making sure that people know who they are and how they can get involved. So we talked a lot about nonprofit organizations and what they do, but there's also getting involved with government boards and commissions. And government boards and commissions are also made up of people from the public. And what these organizations do, what these boards do, what these government commissions do, is they help oversee the work that certain government agencies and programs do. So for instance, you may have heard of the Arizona Developmental Disabilities Planning Council. Now that's a government agency that has an advisory committee made up of people with disabilities, family members of people with disabilities, stakeholders or agency representatives that work with people with disabilities. They all volunteer to be on their board. And their advisory committee helps the organization decide how they are going to create grants, how they want to fund projects in the community that help people with developmental disabilities or with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So you do have advisory boards that do that. They help organizations develop their policy. They make recommendations on how that organization will work and how they will address specific issues. There are other government boards and commissions that do more regulatory stuff. For instance, they might oversee the licensing of people that work in certain industries, like lawyers. You have state bar, or you might have an accounting board that works with people who are accountants. They may handle complaints, and regulatory boards even enforce certain laws and may discipline certain people if they break those laws. When you want to apply for a government board or a commission, you can do so by going on the Arizona state government websites and looking up boards and commissions. It's actually very easy to do, but they do have certain requirements. You have to be a resident of Arizona, so that means you have to live in the state of Arizona. So for instance, you can't live in California and apply to be on a board or a commission here in Arizona. And the same thing with, I guess, government boards and commissions in California. Because you live in Arizona, you can't apply for boards in other states. In Arizona, you do have to be at least 18 years of age. You will have to go on their website and apply by submitting an application. They may even ask you to submit a resume, and they will do a background check. And if you pass those background checks, you may be accepted to join a board. But those boards are assigned by the governor, so the governor's office will sign off on whether or not you're allowed to join a certain board or commission that you apply to. Here's a tip. Here's a tip for joining a board or a commission. And this is a tip that is both for government boards or advisory committees, or even joining a board of a nonprofit. Let the president or the chairperson of that organization or that committee, that board, that government agency, let them know that you're interested in applying. Let them know that you want to join their board, so that that president or that chairperson can then let their organization know. So look out for your application. It makes things a lot smoother, and you might have a better chance of joining that board if the president of the organization or the chairperson knows that you've submitted your application. So always speak to them. Let them know what your plans are. All right, here's some websites. Again, if you're applying for a nonprofit organization, talk to the people who run that organization that you want to join their board. That way they can guide you on how to apply, who to speak to, where to submit your application. If you're interested in joining a state organization or a state agency's board or a city's advisory committee, there are websites in which you can apply online. In Phoenix, you can go to https //boards.phoenix.gov. And then if you're interested in joining a state advisory committee or commission, you can go to bc.azgovernor.gov. And there they'll walk you through the process on how to be able to apply to these organizations or apply to these commissions or boards. Okay, any questions?
Gabe, I think you had one, right? Oh,
Yes. For George, what is some of the best advice for someone is new to idea of serving on your board to get involved and feel comfortable?
That's a good question. The best advice that I would give, if you're just even interested in joining a board, is talk to somebody who's already on board. Ask them questions. What's it like? How did you join? What do you do on the board? What are some of the responsibilities that you have as a board member? How often do you meet? These are all questions that I had when I was interested in joining my first board. I didn't know anything about boards or anything like that. So I talked to somebody that was on the board. You know, they actually, I spoke with a board member who said, you know what, George, you might be a good potential board member. I didn't know what he was talking about. So I spoke to him and I said, well, what do you do? And he explained to me, and I learned more about what that board does, and I learned more about the organization. And I said, you know what, this is something that I can do. So I signed up, I joined. For some reason, they accepted me. And that's how I got started in working with people in the self-advocacy movement, by making these connections. And then I got to meet people like Barb and John and Teresa and Liz and everybody else that I've had the good fortune of working with over the years. Avi, do you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question. And my question is, what brings you to the board?
What do you mean? Can you?
I mean, like, when you part of our Center for Disability and you're guest speaker, what brings you to our Center for Disability? It's like, why are you presenting? Because I love what he's saying, but what's your 5 years or 10-year plan with us?
Oh, I see.
Like,
Oh,
toss
well,
the
I
same
think,
question back to you.
yeah, what brings me, so what keeps me doing this?
Yeah.
Oh, I just love working with people with disabilities. This is one of my passions. I'm so happy to be able to do this kind of work. And, that's a very good question there, probably. Because let's say that your passion is to be doing something like working with animals. Let's say that that's your passion. You love animals. You really want to do that kind of work. By joining a board of an organization that works with animals, or even just volunteering in some of the programs that they offer, not even joining a board, but volunteering to work in something that they do. That's a great way to start getting into a field of something that you love. And then that's when you find opportunities to get more involved. You start by volunteering, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, we're starting a new program. We need somebody that's going to help us work in it or help us run it. And then that's how you start getting more into something that you really love.
Thank you.
There's one more question I see that, Bridget, it'd be great if you could address, and then would have, at that point, have Teresa and John come in, and they probably will address that question as well. And it says, how would you recommend finding a mentor to assist in participating on a board?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure, if I unmuted myself. Yeah. How would you recommend finding a mentor to assist in participating on a board?
Oh, that's a good question. A good board is probably going to have a mentorship program built into it, right? Especially for new board members. They might pair you up with somebody that's been there for a while and can help you, guide you on, what that organization does, how the board works, how you can get more involved. If they don't, you can advocate for that. You can ask, speak to the board president and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about you. Is there someone that I can speak to if I have any questions, or can tell me more about this organization or how this board works? If you do have a friend that's already on the board, your friends can serve as your mentors. Someone that's already has that experience of being on that board, then they can share more information with you about what they do and how that board works.
Well, I think you've learned from hearing a little bit about George and what he had to say that he's truly an expert in this, and he's helped many an organization build, grow, and with, I think one of the things he writes in his bio is so very true, and that he is a firm believer in the philosophies espoused within the independent living and self-advocacy movements that our society can only be improved if we truly create an inclusive community. There's more to that, but that's really him. I'd now like to introduce both John Britton and Teresa Moore, both of whom have been longtime leaders in self-advocacy, as with George, both in Arizona and throughout the country. They've served on multiple committees, multiple boards across the US. They teach others, mentor others. And John has a wicked sense of humor, by the way, so be careful. And John's worked at Target for, is it 16 years now? I might be off. Anyway, you can let people know that. They both do a lot of work in voting rights and other specific rights for people with disabilities. And they're going to give some perspectives on works what doesn't, when you are being part of a board or a committee, and also some things, some tips about what doesn't work and how you can support others on being on boards and committees. So thank you very much. And John and Teresa, here you are.
Barb, it's 23 years I've been at Target.
Oh, where does the time go?
Would you like to tell people about what you have done as a board member? What roles you've served in?
Yeah. Five, 10,
The vice president,
the
and the president, and the treasurer. And is this at the state or the national level? Both. At the state and national level. And have you served on committees? Being in those roles? What was most helpful to you serving in those roles? What did people do that helped you the most?
Notes.
So people wrote down notes for you? Anything else that they did that was really helpful for you? Talk to me when they had questions or kind of like what I'm doing to make sure I know what you say. Okay. Would you like me to say that part? When people don't understand me, when I use my voice, I ask, you ask other people to sit in. You ask other people to sit in the meeting with you and translate. So sometimes they translating, you might need different help for different kinds of meetings. Because when you do harder meetings, like talk about the budget, does everybody know about budgets? No. So sometimes you have to find somebody that's gonna help you talk about the budgets in a way that more people can understand it. Right? So we try to figure out ahead of time who should help with which meetings so that you have the right help for the right kind of meeting. Did you want to ask and see if they have any questions? Does anyone have any questions for John?
I have one, John. You know, I'm shy, like you're shy, but it's Barb. And, you know, one thing you've taught me over the years is to learn to listen. And I really admire many things about you, but that's one. And after a while, I can understand you, but I know not everybody can without that support. And have you found people look to somebody who's supporting you more than look at you because you have a supporter? And if so, how do you handle that? What makes it easier for people to engage with you?
Can I help translate that? He steps in and he says, hey, you're working with me, not her or them. It's me that you're working with. Please talk to me. Did I get that right? I don't think it was perfect, but I think we got most of it.
That's helpful.
Your helper is, when you say that, sometimes they get mad at him when he says, hey, listen to me. It's me you need to talk to, not them. Sometimes the helpers get mad at him. I don't care because it's me. That they need to talk to.
That's good. That's yeah, that's a good approach. Is you get more comfortable with that, and you know, make it clear that you're the person on the committee or board. So Teresa, you've done a lot of mentoring people to be on boards and commissions. What's have you seen that's worked? And are there some areas that haven't worked as well?
Well, I think I have to say that one of my favorite ways that works is for me to have conversations with self-advocates that I'm going to be supporting on a committee ahead of time. We have conversations that are in private where we talk about, I'm going to be helping you through this meeting. Some of the words are going to be hard. Some of the words you're going to recognize, but not know how they use them in the sentence. And we will need to talk about them for a second so that you know what you're voting on. I want to make sure that you know what you're voting on. So please stop me if you don't understand, because it's your right to know what it is you're voting on as a member of this committee. And that's your job as a member of this committee, is to make sure that you have good information so you can decide what it is that you want to, how you want to make your opinion known to the group. And so I had this conversation with an individual, and we proceeded to the meeting, and we were in the meeting, and I started noticing a little bit of movement in her body and not being really comfortable. And fidgeting with the papers and getting frustrated. And I said, is something wrong? Whispering to see if there's something she wanted to say. And she said, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to speak. And I said, well, if you don't stop the meeting, they're just going to keep talking if you don't. So this is your chance to stop them right now, or they're just going to keep going. And that's what they do here, is they just talk and talk till you stop them. And so she said, I want to stop the meeting and I want to ask a question. And she asked her question, and it was a few statements back about what the question was about. And they said, well, we decided that a bit ago, and I thought you voted. And she says, well, I don't like it anymore. I want to change it. And so they were, well, you're not supposed to change your vote when you get to vote. You're supposed to vote the way you want that time when we asked you. And she said, well, what if I want to do it again? Doesn't anybody ever want to change their mind when they vote? And they said, that happens sometimes, but not very often. Well, I want to do that. Let's do that. And so she asked for it. They did it again, and more people changed their vote than had voted before. And she stated why she wanted to change her vote. More people talked about it, and they ended up deciding differently about how they wanted to approach the issue. And so she said, I'm proud of me. And then she just sat back and was happy with the way things went. And she said, I won't be afraid anymore. I'll just stop them from now on. Because now I know how to do it. That's all you have to do is say stop, and they'll stop. So that's what she did. And that's how we did it. I said, just do it politely, ask for time, ask a question, whatever it is. They're going to be nice about it because they want to make sure that everybody gets to ask their questions. And that's how she did it. So
you've raised some really
changed.
important points. Yeah.
She got to change the way her representation on that board and committee was for her the rest of her service. So it was really good.
That's a
I
helpful
didn't-
example. Yeah.
I didn't have to do anything after that. So I was actually said, she's doing well. Why don't you go ahead and start helping the others that seem like they're struggling? And just, practice with them when they're on breaks and stuff, and ask if they need help with anything. I said, I'd be glad to. So that's what I did.
John, it looks like you're about to say something too.
Yeah. And no.
Would you like me to say that?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't be afraid of nothing.
No.
Don't ever be afraid of nothing.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
So one thought before we move to, opening up for questions is, if I was welcoming you onto a board or committee, and I mean, like there was a bunch of us and we said, oh, we want John and Teresa and George at the table. What are a few things we could do right, and a few things that were just really bad ideas? What advice would you have for us?
Did you want to start, George?
Let me make sure I understood the question.
So
What
George,
advice
yeah,
would you give to work with people with disabilities?
if a person with disabilities is welcomed or was to feel welcome on a board or commission, what are the things that people could do right in welcoming somebody and to be successful in a board or commission? And then what are some things that would be really not helpful?
Right. Well, I think that's a two-part question.
Yes,
On behalf of the person with the disability, I would say that don't be afraid to advocate for your needs. You do need accommodations. Or if you do need accommodations, don't be afraid to speak up for those accommodations. And an accommodation can be anything from perhaps getting documents sent to you electronically because you're not able to turn pages. Getting documents ahead of time so that you have time to review it at your own, pace. Or maybe it could be something much more advanced, or you might need someone like sign language interpreters. These are things that you can request from organizations, and they can work with you to accommodate you for your needs. So don't be afraid to speak up and ask for those accommodations. On behalf of the organization, is be open to those accommodations. Don't think that because a person with a disability applies to your board, they are not able to contribute. They are. They may need accommodations, but they definitely can be part of your board and provide a perspective or a point of view that is unique and that speaks to a large portion of our society, being that of people with disabilities. So do not be afraid to work with people with disabilities. Be open to it and work with them to provide accommodations so that they can equally participate. Hopefully that
thank you. That does answer the question, and would love to hear from Teresa and John on this as well.
We need a moment to think about it. Okay. I think George spoke very well of a couple of issues that I think can really, really help a group. One is some groups may decide that having a virtual or online group to go over meeting materials before you meet might be helpful to a group, or they might choose to do it one-to-one, depending on what their style of learning and their style of concentration. But some groups get really excited by having a lot of conversation about creative thinking and many people with disabilities have many ideas about, things that they could do to make the community better. And when they have those conversations, it just opens up a lot of ideas. So I do think that is a really good way of working with community groups and organizing a discussion that can bring these topics back to the table for the larger group to discuss, and to also have a recording or something of the ideas that they want, that the group wants to hear more of their ideas about. And I think that when I worked one-to-one with individuals that liked that style, I think that they built their own personal confidence over time, and they did eventually flow into the group as they got more comfortable, even though when they first started, they were frightened to join a group. But as they joined the committee, they started feeling like they could join other people communicating and learning what a topic is all about, how you give information, and how you learn what can be done by a certain committee, and what a certain committee might refer to a different group because they're not the best one to work on it, and how you might refer it to a different group to work on because you want to choose something else you want to work on. And so that's okay too. And when you have all these discussions going on, I think it just helps people grow their ideas and their creativity and their thoughtfulness about how to make better communities for people.
John, what would you add?
Should I say that? Okay, George said it pretty good.
Don't blame me.
Don't blame him.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. One, two, now,
Okay, I think I got it. If you want to be on a board, don't give up, because you may be able to make something of it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Thanks. I didn't look at the time and now I am and going, uh-oh. So I'd like to thank George and John and Teresa for all the great information, because we have one more thing that's important and timely to do. And it is about being on a committee. So Lizzie, can I have you kind of queue up this opportunity and have people stay on and talk about it a bit?
Absolutely. Thank you, Barb. And again, thank you, John, Teresa, George, for sharing your insight today. We really appreciate it. I am very pleased to be introducing Drew Milne and Pavi Madivan, two Sonoran Center staff members who are going to be presenting an opportunity for you all to get involved potentially with our Community Advisory Council. So with that, I will hand it over to Drew and Pavi.
All right, can everybody see my screen? Great. So, hello everyone. My name is Drew Milne, and Pavi and I are peer mentors here at the Sonoran Center. And what a great presentation today, right? I really hope you guys enjoyed it. And if that's the case, and if you want to be part of something that contributes to the work that we do of uplifting the voices and perspectives and the wants and needs of people with disabilities, then we invite you to be part of the Community Advisory Council. Bobby, would you like to start us off by talking about a little bit about what the council does?
We want you to be part of the Community Advisory Council. What will be your role? Share the needs of the disability community in Arizona, Tucson. Help us develop activities and resources to address these needs. Monitor our work and tell us how we are doing. Share what we do with your friends and your family.
Thank you, Pavi. So that's a very good summary of what the Community Advisory Council does. We at the Sonoran Center are always trying to make sure that we live up to the phrase, nothing about us without us. So we want people in the disability community to give us feedback on our work, to give us critiques about the projects that we have, and possibly to give us suggestions on how we can move forward in the future to better serve the community's needs. One of the perks of being on the Community Advisory Council is the opportunity to contribute to the Cacti blog. The Cacti blog stands for the Community Advisory Council and Trainee Info Share. And it is a section of our website where essentially you can share what is important to you. You can tell your story, you can talk about things that are going on in your community, and you can let it be heard by a broad audience of people. And this can be in the form of articles or videos or whatever medium you choose. We'll help you tell your story and how you want it to be told. And I think Pavi has some closing words for us.
Life lessons from Pavi's about the power of good. It is good to be alive. Another way to be alive is to know when to stand up for what you believe in and always stand up for yourself. Be determined. Determination is what you and I think is right, despite our physical weakness, and rejection from society, mental well-being. And so lead with example, lead with personality, lead with a character. Otherwise, always have and be open-hearted and be open-minded.
Thank you very
Are
much.
you interested in getting involved? Fill this out in this brief form.
All right, and I think that's all we have. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or the Sonoran Center itself. And right before we go, I will put my email in the chat here. And thank you guys so much for your time. I really hope that some of you will be interested in taking part. And you guys have an excellent afternoon.
Thank you for sharing that, Drew and Pavi, and hopefully we'll get some people quite interested on being on the council, excuse me. And we do have just a minute or two if someone has another question or something they'd like to share. And I'm seeing a lot of thank yous.
While we're waiting for questions to come in, I just want to highlight that in the chat in just a moment, we will have links to a couple of post-event surveys. So there they are. If you wouldn't mind taking a moment to fill those out before you leave today, we'd greatly appreciate it. There's one there for supporters and caregivers, as well as one for self-advocates / participants themselves. And I see a question in the chat from Brenda about the link for the council. We'll go ahead and share that again as well in the chat.
Well, with that, I would like again to thank you for excellent presentation, good questions, and for the all in all participation. We can't thank you enough, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.